When is the next editorial or video coming out? When it does. We don't put schedules on these because they tend to be ready when they're ready. Can we discuss an editorial on this subject? The answer is yes, as long as there's enough material and there's enough story we can find in the subject. Anything could be discussed. Now it's a question of how much will we discuss in time, because at the most we're doing one of these every 3 or 4 months. It's also dependent on whether we can show it in a game, be it Train Z or Railworks, or hopefully soon Train Sim World 2, and also how many photographs in the public domain, and how many of us can film it or get the B-roll. There's just many factors, but the thing is, sometimes the freedom to be able to choose anything is also the downside, because you have to pick something that actually stands out well enough. And also that you are passionate enough to write, start to finish, something fairly complete. Now, just to set the record straight, there are a couple topics we are not planning on discussing, at least regularly. Train wrecks. The problem is that it's kind of hard to stage that. There's not really a wreck simulation that we can do. We don't think we're quite there to touch some of the more sensitive issues, especially some of the more tragic examples. Train movies. That would take a bit more effort to make. A lot of the reference material is not public domain, and we don't know what we could really bring. We might discuss like a locomotive that has appeared in movies, but that's as far as I can see us going. And oh boy, Thomas the Tank Engine. Neither of us are diehard fans, we just don't have a lot to say about him. As far as I can say for me, I haven't watched Thomas since that movie came out, and I didn't even bother to catch it when it was in theaters. And honestly, the work we've seen from The Unlucky Tug, yeah, he's got it way better covered than any of us ever could. Can we add this character to the show? Not really. A character does not interest me. This locomotive, your favorite locomotive, it doesn't do much for me. But having like an actual story concept and like an actually interesting one might be enough. Can I be in San Juan? When you ask to be a voice in San Juan, I kind of would ask you to actually provide an example. Either a video you are in, or you could provide a demo. You just talk to us on Facebook or Discord, send a file, and hopefully, you might actually get in. My reactions to... They're fine. Like, they're things that exist. Guys, I don't really care that much about trains in my spare time. And look, there's lots of things going on in the rail industry. It's pretty exciting to watch it unfold. But honestly, it's not a huge deal to me personally. So that's just what it is. Will Craig be coming back? Here's the clip. Are we going to go to this place with Dynamo? If we're able to, yes. Choose between, alright. Neither, both, and yes.
Right, that's the FAQ out of the way. So, the way we're going to do the Q&A this time around, it turns out that John has quite a lot to say about the things that were asked. Things that I was asked previously back when I hit 1,000 subs back in 2019. So for this next block of questions, I'll only be chiming in if I have something to add. So, John, the floor is yours.
Alright, we're coming to the favorites now. Favorite video project. Current one we're working on has been fun, if only because it actually feels like a real episode. A real story that you could see. It's still got our, hold-ups, but it's something that I was actually willing to show the script to some industry, not professionals, but just people, and just ask them their opinion. They were pretty honest about it, I'll say that. Favorite fallen flag. I'm going to say Milwaukee Road, but that's just because of the family connection. My grandfather worked there as a carman, I believe. Favorite railroad growing up. I was in Burlington, Northern Territory, so I'm just going to have to go with that. Favorite route to shoot. Whichever one I'm photographing. Favorite paint scheme on a locomotive. I'm going to go with the classic Hiawatha. Not only do I have preference, family connections to Milwaukee Road, but I just like the orange. Favorite surviving Berkshire. 765, just because they've done so much with it, both in the past and upcoming. Favorite event or gathering I've done. I was actually very fond of the Streamliners event. Not only was it nice to see an event dedicated to diesels only, mostly, but it was such a relaxed atmosphere, and there was just so much history packed into that one spot. It was just insane. I don't think we'll ever see anything that spectacular again, at least not for a while. So in the meantime, the memories will stay. That video also was fun to put together. Favorite video project. Streamliners was a very meticulous process to put together. I mean, after all, you've got 27 diesels and a 611. You have to present it. None of them are going super fast. And you have to portray them both on the turntable and just moving slowly. But it came together shockingly well to me. And it just came together really well, all things admitted. It's paced really nicely, and there's just so many great shots. Favorite train sim. I'm still a person who supports Aron with Train Z, but which one? They're all nice. Favorite railroad in general. They kind of all are the same to me. I'm just going to go with BNSF just because of childhood connections, and it's the only one that's been, extremely steam-friendly over the years. Favorite Amtrak route. Gonna go with the California Zephyr. Favorite locomotive. Steam engine. Let's just go with 261, but that's sort of my go-to answer. Really, the one that I have a favorite or preference to is just the one I'm seeing. Favorite diesel. Again, they're all kind of the same to me, but it's whichever one I'm photographing. I actually don't see a lot of Streamliner engines, is the irony. And favorite electric, I can't even name them. Favorite Train Z series. Hours. Favorite Train Z content creator. Let's just go with Amtrak Guy 365, because I can't name anybody else. Favorite tourist railroad. They're all, pretty nice, most of them. I have fondness towards Western Maryland Scenic, but that's just really because it was the closest one to me. Favorite MOW, Maintenance of Way. The one that has air conditioning. Favorite preserved articulated locomotive. Yes? If we had a B&O Yellowstone, that would be kind of nice. Favorite B&O steam locomotive. Of the ones that exist, let's go with 4500. Favorite Alco locomotive. Alcos in general are fun. There is no preference. Favorite Canadian National or Canadian Pacific steam engine. I have fond memories of 2317, but that's just because I can remember it. Favorite steam engine from California State Railroad Museum. What else? Cab forward. Favorite of the new heritage units? I haven't seen them yet. I'll go with 145 just because Phase 3 has that nostalgic connection. Favorite locomotive in Train Z. We have a whole show dedicated to this, guys. The C41, the C16, and the whatever Annie is. Favorite European engine? I don't have any of those. Favorite C&O locomotive? I'm going to go with 614 just for what it has done. Favorite whistle? Okay, here's the thing. Again, with the favorite stuff, it's the one I'm hearing. But here's a couple that I do have fondness towards. Southern Pacific 6 chime is always fun. Crosby 3 chimes are nice. I like the one that 2317 wore back in the 2000s and the 90s, I guess. And that's kind of it, to be honest. Steam Locomotive Trust. That's going to get me in trouble if I answer. What is my favorite animal? Sarcastic Fringehead. Favorite color? Orange. Favorite TV show is Mythbusters. Favorite movie? Back to the Future. GTW 4070 or 6325? The one that's still together. Opinion of Amtrak's 2035 map? Ambitious. Do I prefer K&L, Green Coast, or back shops? I mean, K&L is the one that I actually work with, but the other two, like, there is no higher standards to me. It's like, they're all good. Favorite video we have worked on? Moonrailer was a lot of fun. The knockoff one was also pretty fun to put together. Favorite San Juan character? The one who I have the most fun writing is Carter and Ben, because they're actually allowed to be a bit more fun. Will we be involving the pandemic in an episode? No, because why would we need a reminder of that? And more importantly, the show is set in the past, so it doesn't really matter in my mind. Will we do an episode where Trainmaster and Ben go undercover? There really wouldn't be much to say there. Ben gets a paint job and he gets sold on eBay. Will we do a backstory on Nathan? Eventually, we're hoping to kinda showcase exactly what he's been up to, both past and as things have gone on. We are kind of waiting for a remastered model. That's the big holdup there. Will we remaster the first 5 episodes? There's plans to. The problem is they're a little too simple to just straight up take the old audio. When will the diesels shown in the San Juan K&L special arrive? I can tell you that today they are one day closer to arriving than they were yesterday. Will other engines visit? Yes. Why is Dan so funny? Because he has my shining personality. Would a San Juan Branch Line movie be possible? Okay, certainly not theatrical, I wouldn't watch it. But if we're talking about doing something like a 90-minute story, the thing is, we've already done 40-plus minute episodes. So we can just do a longer episode if we feel like it. Nothing really has popped up like that demands it to be that long, but I'm sure something will accidentally happen. If a media conglomerate wanted to put San Juan on primetime TV, would we say so? Well, I'd ask what they're paying. If somebody wanted to, I am sure, like, we could find a way, but I don't really see this as a long-term put this on network television thing. At least not in its current visual affair. Will we add narrow gauge trains? No. It's just another hiccup, and it's just not really my interest right now. How would the engines look if they had faces instead of the talking train tech? You guys have seen the Cars movies, right? Basically like that. And I'll be honest with you guys, we don't do an animated face, because that would take even longer than we already do. Are we still making the Amtrak Guy 365 crossover? No, Amtrak Guy pulled the plug on that. He outlined why in the linked video. Will we do any standalone episodes? Yeah, we actually want to just do, like, take a event or a notable thing that happened in trains and just kind of present it as it did happen. Ah, the old restoration page. If I could restore and operate a preserved steam locomotive, which would it be? I actually have an easy answer to this one. Atlanta and West Point 290. It is the Southern PS4 that we can actually run, and run wherever we choose. It's in good shape, relatively speaking, and it's a decent-sized locomotive. Of course, the problem is running it at Atlanta just wouldn't really be that feasible. Like, yeah, you could find a tourist line, probably down with the Sugar Express or even up in North Carolina. But it is just the engine that I would be willing to, spend my lottery winnings on. That's just the easy answer. More likely I'd find something a little more modest and, find a tourist line that could actually use it. Resurrect any extinct steam locomotive. Now that one is also easy, the New York Central Hudson. Come on, guys, it's considered to be one of the pinnacles of steam locomotives ever built. And it's too bad none got saved, but New York Central was famously stingy with that stuff. So yeah, New York Central Hudson, gotta give the easy answer. If I had to give another one, we'd go with the Milwaukee Road F7 Hudson, just for probably the ultimate streamlined locomotive. But building a new one to operate it, that's one I can't quite see happening. If I could ride any excursion between any destinations, where would I have it? Well, obviously, I would want to have a steam engine on a turntable operate to my house. If I could visit any heritage railway in the world, where would I go? There's nowhere preference. Okay, fine. The one in Ecuador, Guayaquil, and Quito, just for like the ultimate in mountain railroading. If we could build a brand new engine or steam project, what would I do? Find a turn of the century, the 19th century, steam locomotive, a decent sized 260 or 280, and build multiples of that. Find tourist railroads that could use them and, send them around. Because I feel like the steam engine is just going to continue to get older. We're going to need some new ones eventually. And I have no idea when that day is going to happen. But to me, it's like, okay, let's build them in bulk. Let's get a decent-sized engine with some actual power. And just see what we can do with it. That is more of a theory, not something I would spend actual money on. Will I build a HO scale model railway? Okay, model trains are something that I wish I could get back into, but it really comes down to expense and space. And in my mind, at least with all this train stuff that I film, I can fit it on a couple hard drives, not a huge layout with all this extra storage and hundreds of dollars worth of track, engines, buildings, electrical stuff. It's just a bit much to me. Are we going to make a history video for a fallen flag railroad? Oh, there will certainly be more. What would have happened if Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central had merged with other railroads? Well, to me, considering all of them had gone bankrupt by the mid-70s, it would have just been the same, but different. They all would have wound up mixed into the Conrail family, or at least that's how I see it. Because by 1972, when Hurricane Agnes came about, pretty much all of the railroads were trashed by then. Which Canadian Pacific engine would I like to have return to service? Well, it's either 2317 or 2816. Running a diesel on natural gas, is it a good idea? It needs refining. What other ideas do we have in mind for San Juan Branch Line? Many! Did you also do voice work in The Full Buccaneers? Yep, those were good times. Are you a model railroader? I am not. If I ever got back into it, I would either go to HO or just buy a decent O-scale model and just run it at shows. Or, more likely, just put it in a glass case and never run it again. When did we get into trains? The when is hard to pin down, but I grew up in a town called Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and there were multiple factors that pushed me into being into steam engines. For one, that is home to the Midwest Central Railroad, where they operated 3 steam engines every year at the Old Threshers reunion. The engines were quite the interesting mix, with a German tank engine and a Shay. The one that I am sure I will always have a fondness for is number 6, a 260 Mogul that is well over 100 years old. It is just the most traditional locomotive they had, and probably the one that I spent the most time looking at. Also, Mount Pleasant is an Amtrak stop for the California Zephyr. I probably spent more time checking out Amtrak because it would always be the westbound from Chicago, which means it would usually be on time around 5 p.m. Also, my grandfather was a Milwaukee Road man, and he always encouraged it, and especially because this was around the time 261 would have been restored, so that means I would have watched a lot of videos of it growing up. But yeah, there were a lot of train videos I watched, and just a lot of family connections. My family was not exactly supportive of trains, but they were at least willing to go with it. And even though I know I watched Thomas growing up, I was more of a American mainline steam person. In fact, it would take until my teen years for me to really get into the tourist railroad scene. Also, you have to remember, I was in Iowa. There was not exactly a lot. Most interesting rail fanning experience. I have fondness for a trip I did in 2017, which was based in Chicago. The most fun part was chasing the Sioux Line 1003 from Janesville, Wisconsin, down towards Chicago. It was just a perfect mixture. Here is this relatively smaller locomotive with a decent-sized freight train along a relatively easy-to-follow route. My most disappointing rail fanning moment, there were some photo specials that I had to be involved with in 2015, and to say that they were not the greatest is an understatement. And the thing is, in my mind, it sucks. In fact, that's kind of the issue. We had done a charter the previous year where things had to be changed on the fly, ironically because of the weather. But it turned out fine because we stuck through it, we knew the route, and we made sure that we were listening to what the railroad and what the fans wanted. We did not have that luxury in 2015 because we were in brand new territory with people who had no idea who we were, and boy, that backfired on us big time. Having a bad experience is humbling because it reminds you you are still human. What locomotive do I despise? I'm not fond of the Reading T1s, but it has a lot more to do with the fans, or should I say one fan in particular who has quite an entry on the Kiwi farms. But it is to say, like, you can't define a locomotive just because it has moronic fans. But it's difficult sometimes. What is the weirdest comment I have seen on one of my videos? Unfortunately, I don't know where it is, but I remember in a video I had, it had a distinctly foghorn type whistle, and somebody commented saying, "It sounds just like that whistle that hit that woman at Downers Grove." I just remembered seeing that and just for a full minute, just staring at it like, of all things you could reference. Do you really despise Thomas the Tank Engine? Okay, my thoughts on Thomas the Tank Engine are it's a good gateway, but it should have ended probably 15 years ago. But in my stance, I have not watched the show for about 15 years. Once in a while, I'll check out an episode that's recommended, but I have no investment. If Thomas is announced to be canceled, it doesn't matter to me. In the vein that trains are considered to be for children, that's the only part that irritates me, but that's just how the public's going to be. Have I seen Sodor Fallout? Yeah, it's actually pretty good. What steam locomotive restoration am I looking forward to? I'm going to win some points from Brian and just say NC and Saint-El 576. Otherwise, all of them. What engine deserves to be restored? I already said 290, but if I had to pick another one, like let's say something at a tourist railroad, let's say Sioux Line 2719. That'll probably happen in the next decade whenever 332 becomes due for a rebuild, but yeah, Eau Claire represent, guys, come on. Do I want to work for a railroad? No! No, not a chance. Turning your hobby into your profession is a great way to not like your hobby anymore. And I don't have the patience to work on railroads. I think the most that could happen is if somehow I wound up as like a PR spokesperson, but I don't see that happening. What places do I go rail fanning at? The funny thing is, I was recently editing together a video about diesel trains, and I looked through all my CSX freight footage, and I discovered I do not film much. Like, at all. Part of the problem is there's not a lot of great locations in this area, and now that I am more physically active, it has me no interest in standing in one place for hours a day. I know stuff out here like Point of Rocks, Harper's Ferry, and Shenandoah Junction. Those are places I need to get out to more often. I'm in Baltimore and Ohio territory. I know some of the landmarks. I just don't go to them. Have I heard of Roaring Camp? Yes. What is better, a Class B tender engine or an A5 switcher? Well, obviously a C16. Of the Steamtown roster, what locomotive would I like to see rebuilt? So we're not counting the ones that are being restored. Well, the ones in my mind that are the most logical to rebuild are 2317, 3377, the 47, and Maine Central 519. I like the idea of them having a small engine for the yard locals, a large engine for the excursions, and a medium-sized locomotive for the local stuff. So I think one of the 280s would be nice. 790 was the suggested candidate, but apparently it needs a lot of work. So if, without discussing or looking at any logistics, I would say 519. Rahway Valley 15 might also be suitable. I'm not quite sure if it's big enough. How has the pandemic affected our work? Shockingly, not that much. Like, I don't film a whole lot in the first half of the year. So to me, all that happened is I lost 2 months. At first I thought I wouldn't get to film Thomas again, but then Strasbourg did a whole lot of stuff with him. And I still was able to travel in 2020 to places like Cuyahoga Valley, Hocking Valley Scenic, and Great Smoky Mountains Railroad. Even though it was not a normal year, I still made do. And as for San Juan, not at all, because I didn't lose any work at all. In fact, it kind of overworked me because I was under the mentality of, well, you got to keep working, you don't know when things are going to shut down. And then by July, I realized I was completely exhausted. Then I started working for the Census Bureau, and I was just exhausted for the next 3 months. Made a lot of extra money, though, so I've been pretty relaxed since then. Here's an interesting irony. In 2018, I had a car that was malfunctioning constantly, so I lost the entire fall season for filming. In 2019, I hit a deer, so once again, I did not have a car for much of November and December. So ironically, 2020, when everything is, what it was, I was actually out filming, and nothing went wrong. I guess the rest of the world needed to be on its knees for me to finally succeed. For example, I went down to the Great Smoky Mountains in October and was able to get a hotel that night. If this was a normal year, yeah, not a chance that would ever happen. Will any channel cover smaller gauges, like 15-inch gauge? We've debated about this. Like, Dynamo, I could see it on there, but at the same time, it just depends what we film. Tell us about the writing process. Well, the famous John Swartzwelder gave his advice for writing. You sit at a computer and you just keep writing until you don't want to write anymore, and then you wake up the next morning and fix what you wrote. There is no secret to writing. You just gotta keep doing it. Writing is like having homework every day for the rest of your life until you die. Like, how do people get good at it? They just keep at it. And to be fair, professionals have a lot of people who help them and look at them, or look at their work. Like, come on, even the professionals have to get edited. Generally, it's about a month of outlining and another month of writing. Of course, those are not necessarily continuous. But if Brian and I really pushed ourselves, we could get an episode written in about a month, and then another month to work out all the hiccups, and then another month to film it, / voice record, all that. What inspired us to become a YouTuber? I don't know if it's so much to say we wanted to become known. It's just we wanted to share our work. We are essentially filmmakers in one way. If everybody's posting to it, then why not stand out just a little? So, if production time was not an issue, what video would we like to tell? I would like to do something about the Ashtabula horror. For a Train Z story, I would like to do something about the backstories for all the engines. And if we were talking about just a video about a locomotive, we would tell the history of a steam locomotive. We would just present it in depth, like year by year, event by event, that sort of thing. How long does it take to edit? For Dynamo, it's about a week. It's a day or two to outline, another day to organize, and then 2 days to actually fit it all together, another day to add things like color correction, adjusting shots, masking, and of course locations and title cards. So a week for Dynamo, and San Juan is several months. Have we considered putting the show on DVD? No. Like, guys, this show is only barely worth watching because it's free. I can't imagine charging people money for it. For Dynamo, we have Yard Goat images, and Brian and I are working to produce some new material. We'd basically take a handful of Dynamo videos and just polish them further, add more history and details, and yeah, we could put together a decent 90 to 120 minute feature every year or so. How did we get involved with Yard Goat images? I have been involved with Yard Goat since 2012 when I started filming for him. It was exclusive content. There are 12 programs that feature my footage in some capacity. Some of them are full features. In 2019, I was informed that Steve was planning to retire and was basically going to hand over everything to me and, by extension, Brian. And then 2020 happened, and there were basically no new train shows to sell for. So that sped it up just a little. Because of 2020 and everything as it is, there are no train shows, so things are not exactly profitable. But I think, we'll just have to see how the next year and into 2022 does. What inspired me to make San Juan Branch Line? Well, it was definitely some of the other shows that were out there, like Full Buccaneers. The big thing was wanting to tell train stories differently. No narration, a more flexible stance, and just, kind of talking or even commenting on how trains operate, both the game and in real life. I admit, if there's any issue San Juan runs into, it's that we can't decide if San Juan is supposed to be realistic or a cartoon. But I think what inspired me to bring it back, there were just more stories to tell. Yeah, it takes me forever to put out a script, but it is always something that I am confident in. Except Painted Back, I don't know what the we were thinking. My most memorable trip so far is the 2017 Chicago trip. Because of the way everything was structured, that meant that I knocked out a whole bunch of world-class train museums in about the same week. Stuff like Henry Ford, Illinois Railway Museum, Chicago Museum of Science and Industry, and the Museum of Transportation in St. Louis. And of course, Sioux Line 1003, and, well, it's Chicago, guys. There is a lot of great stuff out there, and I know that I only covered a fraction of it. We certainly have our hands full with Dynamo, High Iron, and Yard Goat. How do we manage? Well, the thing is that they all are kind of laid back in what they are. High Iron is a monthly process of videos filmed in a computer. Dynamo is either footage we have or, I just go out, film for a day or two, and I've got a video. And new one goes up every 2 weeks, so that buys us 2 weeks. And of course, we have plenty of old footage that we still keep putting out. As far as I'm aware, we could do this forever as long as we keep going out. But Yard Goat is pretty laid back. It's just DVD sales and putting up some of the old footage that I have. So it's like, yeah, it didn't eat up much time at all. What is my greatest accomplishment? Well, just turning Dynamo into a success. In 2020, it definitely did well, and that's impressive considering how everything was. So I don't know if we'll ever match what we did before, at least not while the algorithm is kind of weird, but I'm just impressed that Dynamo and just filming trains can not be a lifestyle, but at the very least be an affordable hobby. How do we decide on topics? We look at ideas we have and we try to figure out what is both something we can present because it's available and just what interests us into making it work. We want to do a couple videos about specific steam locomotives, and we're actually trying to not focus on the celebrity engines, not just because, there's a lot more info. Well, we're actually focusing on some of the more obscure locomotives because we think it would be a little easier to cover them in full. Like, we don't want to just cover engines that are running, like the Daylight or 844, because their stories are still ongoing. We want to talk about the ones that are relatively done. So at least then we know the ending. What videos take the longest to produce? Well, it's definitely San Juan, but that's just because I can't write fast enough. Which video posed the biggest risk? I think that was definitely Moonrailer because, we were shaking up the status quo. Thankfully, the fans reacted pretty nicely to it, even though they're still complaining. Where do we get all our info for our videos? Books, websites, museums, visits, chatting with knowledgeable people. What's it like managing 3 big projects at once? It's actually not too difficult. You just focus on the one that interests you the most. And if you get stuck, you just move on to the next one. But you gotta make sure you're completing stuff, because otherwise you're just a non-completion creator. What is always the most fun and hardest part of recording videos about railways? Recording? Really, it's just knowing exactly what you want to do. But a lot of it is the anticipation, because once you're there filming or doing it, yeah, it becomes pretty straightforward. Do I have interests other than railroading? Well, yes, I do. I am into animation, but not as an animator, but as a writer. I am working towards storyboarding because, that's kind of good to get a visual language going. I am a lot better with story concepts and outlining than I am with the actual writing process. But let's be honest, that's what a lot of writers would say. Like, I would just appreciate having the ability to work with a studio on just a major project, not my project, but somebody else's, just taking a good idea and just making it even better. But that's what everybody wants. What is the most underrated cartoon of the century? Well, I would say it's Kipo, because nobody's heard of it. But I'll be honest, I just think it's okay. The cartoon that I wish had succeeded but didn't would be... Well, guys, come on, I'm a superhero fan. It's that Spectacular Spider-Man show. Come on, Season 3. Do I like horror games? Games, not exactly, but I don't game a whole lot anymore. I like movies that are scary. But that's just because I like watching everybody else freak out. Which train videos inspire me in my visual telling? So, obviously you got stuff like Pentrex, Greg Scholl, and Video Rails. Their quality of filming and editing, plus, their mixing, is always impressive. I also like the ones like Hopewell, which is Rich Melvin, Berkshire, which is Grant Geist, and I was also fond of Goodhart Productions. Those are the kinds of videos where they have too much footage, so they have to condense it down into an hour or 90 minutes, and they make it flow really fast and really quick. And once I caught on to that, it's like, yeah, it became really interesting to see how they can make an hour of steam engines flow really nicely. And for the YouTube scene, I've always been impressed by Joe Fusco's work. He puts a artistry on things that I don't usually see elsewhere. And of course, Coaster Fan, just because I swear we don't try to emulate his style, but we can certainly copy it. See, here's the thing I have to remember, I'm old, so a lot of my fellow train filmers have just kind of moved on. And right now there's a lot of new young folks who are good, but I don't know who's the standout yet. Like, I judge you all silently and approvingly. Like, I just want to see everybody succeed, because, this is train videos, guys. There's no room in this hobby to be combative, despite what the internet seems to think. So to me, it's that just film what you want, do what you can, and just do it as well as you can. I mean, that's a philosophy I've had for the last, 15 years. I think I only started getting good filming in 2011, because I've looked back at Dynamo videos I've produced from around that time, and yeah, they actually aren't that bad, relatively speaking. And the thing is, it's not like I would say I've improved quality-wise, it's just now I film in 4K. A train video is not difficult. You need to go out and film a lot. You get plenty of run-bys, you get ride footage to kind of support the spine of the program. You just make sure you're doing it as thorough as you can. Basically, with Dynamo, the whole video is there, you just need to find it. With San Juan, you have to create it from scratch. So we're kind of working backwards.
Alright, John, thanks for all your input. As for me, like I previously pointed out, lots of these questions I had already answered in my previous Q&A videos, or John answered them so well that I couldn't really add anything. Now it's time for me to step in and wrap up the remaining bits and pieces. Can you build an HO scale model railway? I already did, actually. You might see something about it with our new affiliate channel, Dynamo Scale. Will Steam Against the Current 2 still happen? That one is waiting on support from people to make it happen, but someday. Where do you get the background music for your videos? Just about everything is from YouTube's audio library. A few exceptions also include Wikimedia Commons and the Internet Archive, but be sure to double check whether they're actually royalty-free or in Creative Commons. When did you begin using train software? Going by Amtrak Guy 365's video on the game's history, the pre-SP3 version from 2001. Juan Branch Line began with TRS 2004. What simulator did you use for the Burlington Northern and Union Pacific videos? The BN editorial was filmed exclusively with Trains A New Era, and so was most of UP Superpower, except for the segment with the DDA-40Xs and U-50s being in Train Simulator 2020, or Railworks as I'm used to calling it. Did you know that the Colorado Railroad Museum saw Full Steam Ahead trying times? Yes, I'm quite flattered. Who voices Twyla from Full Steam Ahead? It clearly says in the credits. Did you know Brazil had Berkshires? Cool. What sort of lateral or out-of-the-box moves do you think might benefit heritage railroads in the years going forward? For the most part, the viewpoints that I express with Full Steam Ahead is based on just observations of what's going on in the outside world. Basically, the key word in all of this is to stay relevant in the community your train's operating in, so it has a solid base of supporters that it can count on for years to come. Have you seen Sodor Fallout? Don't care. What is your favorite Full Steam Ahead episode? Probably the next one I'm making, who knows. What happened to the Conrail Dash 8s and Dash 9s? Dash 8s for the most part are still roaming fine, Dash 9s? Conrail never had them. Do you have any other interests other than railroading? Video making allows me to enjoy cinema, music, writing, traveling, and learning about different parts of the world. Which simulator do you find easier to work with when filming? Trains is what I work with the most, so I know that one pretty well inside and out. That being said, I would like to try some more things with Railworks as time allows, and hopefully I can do something with Train Sim World too, when there's more stuff to work with. Do you know what's a good camera that can do the job at a cheap price? These days, it's a smartphone. That video I did last year was about DSLRs and camcorders, which tend to run pretty high, but smartphones are something I might cover in the future. Hardest thing you have to deal with in trains. Setting up scenes is probably the most arduous part. If you watch any of the build videos by Approach Medium, it's pretty easy to see how unbearable things can get. What other names did you think about before changing the channel name to High Iron? As for how I came up with the name, I looked through an old railroading book by Lucius Beebe and pulled out a few terms from the time period to try and evoke a sense of prominence, at least with something that didn't sound too similar to signal indications or geographical ties. The runner-ups were Cinder Snapper, Company Notch, and Thousand Miler. I submitted this list to a few friends to decide which was best, and High Iron was the one that got the most votes. And that's basically it, guys. Thank you all, over 10,000 of you, for submitting questions, and for listening to us ramble on about how much all of this means to us. We're very appreciative of all your support, and for the fact that we get to do this kind of thing. Until the next video, I am Brian, and I got a train to catch.